Good afternoon, everyone. Been able to have all our speakers here on the podium, and I think we can start the session. This session has a very long title and quite ambitious in a sense. I think it might be useful to sort of translate it into something a bit more practical. And in my own perspective, I think that the focus of this session is on green skills development. Of course, that's the main topic of the conference. We know it's a main facilitator of a just transition. But what we want to look at in detail in this session, in this discussion, is how labor market policies, labor market institutions in terms of employers and worker organization, and support systems to labor market policy like public employment services or private employment services can actually make a contribution to greening the skills in order to greening the economy. So I think, in my view, this is a main item, a main focus of the discussion today. And if they can help doing in a way that, respect the ambitious objectives of not just having a sustainable transition, but also something which is inclusive and efficient as possible. So a policy package, a combination of policies, of labor market policies and skills policies and institutions can really help to sort of achieve a multi-dimensional objectives that is ahead of us. We're going to do a sort of a world tour. I think the organizer tried to capture some of the best experiences, different approaches, so different structure, different actors, so that can help achieve these objectives of green skills. We start with a presentation from a colleague from the OECD. Marieke is a labor economist at OECD. She will talk for 10 minutes using a PowerPoint, and I think the idea is to give us some kind of a framework, so some kind of guiding post on how to organize the discussion. So I will immediately give the floor to Marieke. I will introduce the speaker as they are called into action in the panel, but we'll start with Marieke.
Okay, thank you very much. I will present some insights from our recent work that we've done at the OECD in the area of adult learning with a focus on inclusive and responsive training opportunities. So I also have a very long title just to be in line with the theme of the session. So this is all based on work that we've published in the last few months, of course with the focus on OECD countries. If you would have data from your own country that you think we could add, we are very much open to that. I can be very brief on the mega trends. We've discussed this. Everyone has mentioned them already today. So all of these trends, not only climate change, technological progress, population aging, globalization, but also non-standard work, are changing the skills needed in the labor market, but also the way that we should organize training. If you think of non-standard workers, which is a hot topic these days, but we don't have a lot of information about. If you think about the fact that they have temporary contracts or often self-employed, dependent self-employed, they have limited access to training opportunities, so they have a role of responsibility for their own training. And that's also something important that we have to keep in mind. So it's not only changing demand for skills, but it's also a change in the way we organize training. So I want to focus here now today on adult learning. Of course, I'm not saying that initial education is not important, but as you know, a lot of people affected by these big changes are already in the workforce. So they need access to upskilling and reskilling opportunities, what we in general label adult learning. Just to give you a sense of these mega trends, so I won't focus only on green skills, it's a bit broader because we see them as all having a similar impact on training needs. Just to give you a sense of automation, this is something we've worked on extensively at the OECD. We have estimated that across OECD countries, 14% of jobs have a high risk of automation. So 14, not the 50 that you often hear in other studies. But in addition to these 14%, so these 14 actually, they will see their jobs change completely or even disappear. In addition to those, we also have 32% of jobs that will see significant changes. So some of their tasks are automatable, but not all of their tasks. So those jobs will not disappear, but they will change. So these people, of course, also need to be prepared for these changes. So you have a large group of people, around 50%, who are in need of upskilling and reskilling. And again, there are big differences between countries. If you see here in Slovak Republic, Lithuania, it's more than 60% of jobs that are changing considerably. It's less intensive in countries like Norway and New Zealand. And this is mainly because of the structure of the labor market, but also because of the differences in the tasks that people carry out within their jobs. We've developed a tool, a nice, fun tool, I would say, where you can test the risk of automation of your own job. So if you go to this tool, which is called OECD Future of Jobs, you can fill out some questions and you get the risk of automation of your own job. So just reply to some questions on the tasks that you do on a daily basis, and it will tell you the risk of automation, but also what other occupations you might consider that have a lower risk of automation. So just a fun tool to play around with. In terms of the green economy, I have to admit that at the OECD we have not looked extensively into this, so I welcome very much the work that the ILO has been presenting here today, and I think it's very important to put this on the agenda. Just to give you a bit of a framework on when thinking about green skills that we usually apply at the OECD, we see the main changes as, first of all, occupations that already exist. Some of them will be growing, some will be shrinking. If you think, for example, very standard jobs like bus drivers, if we think that the green economy will also imply more public transport, of course, existing jobs will grow. Other jobs, other occupations that already exist today will change substantially. Just an example, if you think about automotive technicians with more electric cars, you need a different skill set. And then there's the new occupations, something we already discussed a lot today. There will be new occupations, but just wanted to stress here that it's not all about completely new things. It's a lot about growing existing occupations and changes in existing occupations. So those three things together, and of course the other megatrends, have a substantial impact on the skills that we need in the labor market. And that's where our idea came from to look at adult learning, and we have developed this nice Priorities for Adult Learning dashboard, which we published a few months ago, that looks at how OECD countries are doing in different areas of adult learning to see if their adult learning systems are ready for these future changes. So we look, for example, coverage, inclusiveness, alignment, quality, all different aspects. There was a nice GIF here to show you how it looks, just to go back. So I won't have the time to take you through the whole results, but you can play online with the dashboard and you can see all the different indicators, compare your country with another one, look at the 52 indicators that we have in 7 dimensions. And as I said, we're happy to include other countries if the data are available. So just for today, I'll focus on 3 areas because I only have, unfortunately, 10 minutes. So I chose the ones that are best linked to the 3 pillars of sustainable development. So I'll focus on coverage, inclusiveness, and alignment with labor market needs. Just to give you a sense of the coverage, what we see across OECD countries, that is on average, 40% of adults participate in training in a given year. That can be formal training at an education institution, but it can also be non-formal training online, for example, or with the employer. So 4 out of 10 adults participate in training in a given year. And this is much lower if you look at Greece and Turkey, where it's actually less than 20%. And to give you a sense of the intensity, those people who participate in training do so on average for 30 hours per year. So it's fairly limited, and there's certainly scope for improvement in participation. And together with the dashboard, we've published a report that looks at what countries are actually doing to improve their performance. So what are they doing in the area of coverage? And we have lots of examples in the report, as well as some general policy directions. So just to name a few, what is important to increase coverage is that adults have information, good information about training opportunities and the quality of these training opportunities so they can make good choices. To address barriers to participation, we know that adults have lack of motivation. They're not interested in training in many cases. At the same time, we see that a lot of adults also have financial constraints, and certainly they have time constraints as well. So adult learning policies need to be designed with this in mind, so to adopt some innovative approaches to adult learning. And finally, to also encourage employers to provide more training, because on-the-job training is an important component. I'll just highlight one example here. It's the French personal training account. This has been receiving a lot of attention worldwide. So workers accumulate training credits over their working lives that they can use even when they change employer, when they change employment status. It has been seen by some countries as a magical solution, which is certainly not the case. It is very interesting, but also has a lot of challenges. But at least it's an innovative way to think about training. When you think about inclusiveness, what we've looked at is to see, do all groups actually participate to the same extent in training? And we see that this is certainly not the case. If you look here at this chart, you see low-skilled adults, older adults, they participate less in training, and so do workers in small enterprises compared to large enterprises. And similarly, we see that the unemployed, and especially the long-term unemployed, participate less in training. So this is the case in all countries, just to highlight the most striking one, in my opinion. So the low skills participate much less in training in all countries. And this is, of course, you would expect or you would hope that they have more access to training, but they don't. So this is not something we see only in a few countries, even in the good performing ones, like the Nordic countries. In terms of the policy directions, here it's important to actively try to find these people, actively engage with them, and provide also career guidance. And at the same time, to develop programs and financial incentives that are specifically developed for them. Just one example that we've looked at in detail is the United Kingdom, where Union Learn supports trade unions to help identify workers who need training and to help them improve their employability. So social partners play a key role in outreach activities. Then maybe the most crucial part for today's session, I think, is alignment. What we see is that a lot of firms, a lot of employers say that they measure their skill needs, but then they don't really use this information. We also see this is only from European data. So here we'll see that if you ask firms what the 3 most important skills are for the development of their firm, and you ask them the skills that they're actually training in, there's very limited overlap. So on average, we see that 60% of firms, the overlap is very low. So even if they collect the information, they're not necessarily using it. And we see a similar pattern at the aggregate level. If you think of the way that countries are measuring their skill needs, at the national level, regional level, sectoral level, we see that a lot of countries are having interesting exercises in place, but then they're not used as much as we would like. And there are many reasons for that. Could be that it's too technical, that they don't share it widely. But we see something like this happening at different levels. Another aspect of alignment that we've looked at is to see whether people who are actually at risk of losing their job, at risk of automation, whether they participate in training or not. And we see that here, for example, those who have a high risk of automation participate less in training. So those who actually need help to transition are not participating in training. And just to end here on the policies, first of all, collect information on skill needs, and then use it in policies. In adult learning policies, use it to design programs, to decide which programs to offer. And finally, also look at those, as I just said, that have a high risk of losing their job or having their skills become obsolete, and design specific programs for them. We found a few interesting examples for the latter, although it's not the easiest task. If you look at Australia, for example, they're workers in areas with low future employment prospects. They have access to what they call structural adjustment packages, where they receive career guidance, recognition of prior learning, training, really to help them make smooth transitions. And something similar exists in Sweden, which is led by Social Partner, the job security councils. Also there, workers at risk of collective dismissal have access to career guidance, training, and similar services. I'll stop here, but there's a lot more information in our report. So as I said, you can look at the dashboard to see how your country is doing. Look at our report for policies. And then one brochure that I would highly recommend in this setting is also the one that we did on making adult learning work in social partnership, where we have examples of what social partners are actually doing in the area of adult learning. Thank you very much.
Well, sort of, many thanks, Marieke, for sort of setting the scene for the discussion. I think from your presentation, it's very clear that there is clearly a need to invest more in training, to do more in the training area. And there's a specific need to make it in a way that, you know, it's an inclusive, it's a tool for inclusion and not for exclusion. And you ended with a number of policy suggestions. So this is where we start in asking the inputs from our panelists, but also in particular how we can improve the delivery of new green skills. So skills that are really targeted to the just transition, and based on your experience, what are the factors of success? What is the distinct value added of the work that you've been doing, that your institution has been doing? We'd like to start with China, which is a country that has really embraced issues of economic transformation and industrial development with a lot of vigor, and now with the same vigor is looking at question of transition to a more environmentally sustainable economy. China has a number of challenges in this area. They now engage in a major effort to retraining, reskill the people who were in industry like steel and coal, which are clearly on the declining end of the economic trajectory. So we would like to ask Mr. Yutong Liu, who is the counselor at the permanent mission of the Republic of China here in Geneva, if can give us some insights on the approaches, on the priorities of the government of China in this area. Thank you, Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Chair. It gives me so great an honor to be with you. I will actually, it's a huge challenge. My colleague was saying the mega trend. So I think actually I have only 5 or a little bit more minutes to cover this huge topic. So I better take good use of my green minutes to the full. I don't have actually transparency slides. If I were to have, it's only 2 slides. I would like to talk with you. The first page would be about our observations, our learning from the country's perspective. I come from People's Republic of China. I was actually with international organizations on a lot of programs. So my first slide would be our observations. My second slide would be actually a practical review of some programs we carried out, what we learned. So I can guarantee every one of you is not academic at all. I will be very practical with you. So my observations, our observations, to be modest. Well, I thank the office, the secretariat, organizing this event. It's very timely. I think actually skills is the topic that should be covered by the ILC, by this house. So really, happy to see we are gathering together to cover this, real topic and this meaningful topic. Colleague was saying is the mega trend. I don't want to waste time on the mega trend. I just want to persuade colleagues by saying if we admit it is a trend, better not be pushed by the trend. Better you push the trend, you lead the trend. Don't be pushed by the trend. So if that's going to be the trend, let's actually ride on this trend. So I think actually the emphasis should be on the understanding of this trend. So I thank colleagues from OECD, from other countries sharing with us these trends. Second observation, it would be actually is about action. I think the emphasis should be let's put actions in place. Rather, it's about implementations. Some colleagues, who have posting in Geneva, we all know that we spend a lot of time, working on the wording of a lot of documents. If I share with you, I think ILO has 2, outstanding strengths. A would be The jargon would be the normative mandate, the standard supervision. B would be a development cooperation. I think actually development cooperation is mostly about how countries can share experience together. Let's actually put these policies, translate these policies into firm actions. The third observation would be actually now, for time, as ILO enters its centenary, people here say at the eve of the centenary, it's about skills. It's about employability. We emphasize, science, technology. Skills is the counterpart to technology, to innovative technology. So skills also need to be adapted. Like colleague in OECD was saying, skills, there's still a huge skill gap to be filled. We always quote the Declaration of Philadelphia. We say labor is not commodity. What labor is was left, not saying, we can have a lot of saying from our bottom-up heart. That would be actually, labor should be a productivity. Labor is creativity. Labor is green productivity. Labor is green employability. That's my understanding. So speaking with you about our understanding on skills, I would like to share with you the programs we had over the years, say over the past 3-4 years, some programs. These are all the real stories, programs I got involved with international organizations. The first one would be, we call that classification of occupations. Also, countries can call that dictionary of occupations, or dictionary of jobs. We, in order to make action, to translate this policy into action, we worked from the actually root of the issue. That is, we actually identify new occupations. So we have greening, marking to our 2,200 classifications. This way, you can give the hint which is going to be on the rise, which is going to be risky in the future in terms of jobs, in terms of skills. So this is very much a guide to our vocational training institutions. This is also an indication to job seekers. I actually echo colleague in the morning was saying for skills, everyone has a role to play. Employers, group, workers group, individuals. Mostly, I think individuals need also to take their ownership, their responsibility in shaping their own skills. Skills will be the instrument to, shape their employability. So we were able to do this dictionary of jobs, of occupations. So then that became actually a national instrument. Training agencies can follow, and when you do labor market services, job seekers and vacancies can match. Once you have the same, reference, once you have the same, indication of green skills. So that's one instrument. Due to time, I will not actually make any further comments on that. Another program I got involved is the e-waste approach. E-waste recycling, you see, for China and also most developing countries, for the electric appliance we use, mostly will end up, say, in China or in other developing countries. But you cannot, just burn those actually equipment, mobile phones. You need to recycle some of the pieces. So it's still handwork. So we were able, there were actually communities in China who worked on, it was actually a small city worked on this recycling of TVs, refrigerators, these things. So it was actually an individual initiative, and they saw the occupational hazards. So the community was actually sitting together. So they were saying social dialogue. It was not invitation. It's rather actually they came together. So they actually, the individuals were, formed, combined into a cooperative, just like a COOP you see in Geneva. It became a cooperative, so they were able to, recycle a lot of, metals, including silvers, to make the board, the motherboard of computers, and also refrigerators, TVs. So this way, this appliance could be recycled, could be actually used further. Another program would be the greening SFIB. In China, we did this SFIB. Interesting in this house, this bench and that bench, they argue all the way. They were saying actually social dialogue. But there is a category of people who are, say, individual own account, say, working force. They are workers. They can also be seen as employers. So we did this self-employment training. BCI law is called START and improve your business. SFIB. We incorporated greening elements. It actually served, huge. Even for the huge, say, company like Alibaba, it was able to incorporate this element. It was able to duplicate their application to, say, a huge number of, say, entrepreneurs. So this is another way of saving energy and saving resources. I have another, actually, rural migrant working program. I will stop here. Maybe we will find extra time because they were saying I'm not getting green now, so I've stopped there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, also for keeping in line with the time. I'm very glad you mentioned the SIYB program, Start Your Own Business program, because I was involved with it in Asia, and it's actually extremely effective. I'm very glad that it's being used for purposes of greening the economy. And I would like to take my advantage to make just one comment. Of course, the commitment to skills development, commitment to green skills development, it's essential. It's still a facilitator. I think it should be complemented with a commitment to full employment, to the creation of good and decent jobs. So the two things should go together. Another big country which is struggling with the issues of environmental disasters and concern is Brazil. And Brazil, from what I understand, has a sophisticated system of public vocational training institutions at different levels, but also have an important contribution from the private sector in terms of what they call the S system, a collective system of 5 training institutions. I also understand that Brazil is particularly engaged in making training, green training more inclusive, and reach out to a number of vulnerable groups. So I would like to ask our next speaker, Mariana Eugenio Almeida, who is coordinator of the National Observatory on the Labor Market, and clearly has quite a vision of the labor market, but to tell to us in particular on the effort in the greening the skills to the vocational training system. Please, Mariana, thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually very happy to be here. It's an honor to share some of my experience and most of all to learn with other countries' experiences. So thank you very much for the invitation. And let me start by giving you an overview of Brazilian situation right now, Brazilian labor market situation. As you may be aware, Brazil is now recovering from this big economic crisis that has led the country to high unemployment, so that reached around 13% in 2017. Now we began to see some recovering with a decrease of unemployment, but at the same time, informality is growing. So in 2019, around 40% of working population was informal economy. So I think it's a very important issue that has to be taken into account when designing active labor market policies. So I think this scenario poses big challenges when it comes to our labor market policies, our environment, and also our people. A recent study developed by the Applied Economic Research Institute showed that there was a relative stagnation on the development of certain skills in Brazil in the recent period, and skills that are directly linked to the future of work. These can be in part explained by the changes observed in the structure of the labor market, with the decline of the participation of industrial and extractive activities after 2014. And on the other hand, sectors such as services, education, or transport have grown, but they have not incorporated some skills related to the future of work. I think we have made some progress when it comes to anticipating and identifying some of the skills for the future of work. And our previous experience on TVET programs, especially this big national strategy that was implemented in the past decade, has showed that better results are reached when the courses offered are linked with the demand of the labor market. So I think it's a big challenge to identify and to anticipate and to work together in order to identify the needs, not only of the employers, but also workers' needs. On this regard, coming specific to the question about the S system, I believe the S system plays an important role on identifying the demand quickly, together with government as well, and in some cases, when necessary, adapt the programs and the courses considering the changes in the labor market. On the other hand, the S system could also incorporate some green skills on the courses, also some soft skills, as we were discussing in the morning, and information about environmental impacts of some activities on our societies. Still talking about TVET programs, I would like to highlight the importance of apprenticeship programs in Brazil. We have a law in 2000 that requires that all medium and large-size companies have to have from 5 to 15% of their workforce made up of apprentices. So I believe this is an important policy that has promoted youth employment, and especially has good results for women as well, young women, because around 50% of apprentices are women, young women. And also on incorporating people with disabilities, because people with disabilities can participate on apprenticeship programs at any age. And also the S system is really involved on this program, so it's another important role when we talk about vulnerable groups. Finally, I will change a little bit the subject, but I think it's also important. I would like to highlight the efforts we are doing within the Labor Secretariat. I didn't say before, but the National Labor Market Observatory is in the Labor Secretariat that is now in the Ministry of Economy in Brazil. And we are putting a great effort on updating our national classification of occupations. I believe it's a big challenge now to keep it updated, and since we are facing many changes in the labor market. And how we are doing it, we are building a network of partners, which include employers, workers, and academia, researchers. including the system as well. And on the other hand, well, we're building this network in order to monitor the changes that are putting in the labor market. And on the other hand, in order to make it quickly and updated, we are using technology on our favor and implementing tools with like artificial intelligence to map the demands on internet, social media, and places like that. And last but not least, coming to the end, we are now developing the Brazilian classifications framework, which will cover over 600 occupations in Brazil and will provide a comprehensive and updated description of skills, competences, and knowledge needed for each occupation. And I believe it's a big effort that is being developed now together with social partners and other institutions from academia as well. The people who are involved are directly responsible for curriculum development. So it's, I think it will bring us a very good tool to plan our active labor market policies. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. I mean, indeed, a good system to monitor the labor market is actually an important prerequisite for a good system to anticipate skill, to make the right investment in the skills that are needed, including the green skills. We now turn to another country. In the business world, sometimes you look at small business. We are in the job of promoting employment. So you look for small businesses that can be particularly creative and innovative. You find quite a lot of examples of that kind. And now we're going to move to a country which is a small country, but I think is really cutting edge in terms of innovation and dealing with the challenges of environmental sustainability. The Costa Rica Pura Vida is a country which is, I think, worldwide known for their policies. And I think we have a precious resource with us because our next speaker, José Salas Carrillo, is the HR advisor for the Industrial Chamber of Commerce in Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is really a good practice for the ILO approach to a good skills anticipation model. So the capacity to really have a constant feedback between the private sector and the public sector to adapt and continuously upgrade your investment in training. So, José, please.
Buenas tardes, señoras y señores, compañeros de la mesa. Sí, tenemos primero que establecer dos grandes principios cuando tratamos de implementar algo tan importante como es saber con anticipación qué empleos verdes se van a necesitar. Normalmente como seres humanos pretendemos tener resultados para el día siguiente y eso hace que muchas políticas gubernamentales y estrategias de las compañías no funcionen. Porque, digamos en el caso de Costa Rica, empezamos el sistema a crear una política nacional de empleos verdes desde el año 2012. Sin embargo, quisimos desarrollar un punto que a veces había fricción entre el gobierno y el sector privado, y es el hecho de que el sector público no le estaba ofreciendo al sector privado las competencias y habilidades que se necesitaban en el tiempo inmediato. Entonces nos preguntamos, bueno, ¿y si proponemos los puestos para dentro de 2 años? Le daremos la oportunidad al gobierno y a la empresa privada de coordinar acciones para entonces tener esas personas listas dentro de 2 o de 3 años. Y aquí se nos presentó el primer problema. Nos dimos cuenta que cuando usted va a investigar con el sector empresarial, Para aquellos que no están muy al tanto del sector empresarial en Costa Rica, el 80% de las empresas en Costa Rica son pequeñas, medianas y microempresas. Son aquellas empresas que tienen a lo sumo 50 trabajadores. Y el dueño es el que tiene que hacer prácticamente todo en las medianas, pequeñas y microempresas. Entonces, cuando usted llega a hablarle de empleos verdes y tiene que pagar seguridad social pasado mañana, pues le va a interesar más rápido cómo consigue el dinero para pagar la seguridad social. Entonces nos dimos cuenta que un alto porcentaje de los patronos no estaban visualizando correctamente a mediano plazo cuál era la situación, no de su empresa, sino del mercado en general. Y entonces lo primero que teníamos que hacer era capacitarlos. Y así nació lo que denominamos la Política Nacional de Empleo, de Empleos Verdes, en el que el primer punto fue que teníamos que concientizar a los entes gubernamentales en qué consistían empleos verdes, con la muestra del sector empresarial de cuáles iban a ser esos empleos verdes. Finalmente el sector empresarial se dio cuenta, para bien, de que no eran tanto los puestos como las competencias transversales lo que se necesitaba corregir. Y es que el problema que tenemos en Costa Rica, a diferencia de como la compañera de Brasil nos lo estaba mencionando, es que tenemos desde el año 2008 un alto porcentaje de desempleo que ronda el 13%. No lo hemos podido bajar debido principalmente a que hay dos grupos vulnerables que son los que están perdiendo estas fuentes de empleo. El primero son los estudiantes que vienen saliendo de colegio secundario y lo otro son las personas mayores de 45 años que ya la tecnología los alcanzó y entonces sencillamente son despedidos de las empresas. Y yo le he comentado a algunos compañeros y compañeras en Costa Rica, a mí me duele mucho cuando un noticiero de televisión entrevista a una persona que lleva 2 años sin encontrar empleo y usted le pregunta, ¿y usted se ha capacitado en algo nuevo? No, no tengo por qué. El problema con esto es que entonces, si usted no le enseña las competencias y habilidades con la debida anticipación, nunca va a encontrar trabajo. Entonces, ¿por qué hago este comentario? Porque Costa Rica se ha propuesto unir 3 cosas. 1, empleos sostenibles que sean verdes. Segundo, que las personas que vayan a ser desplazadas y que ya están siendo desplazadas por la tecnología puedan adquirir las destrezas para las nuevas posiciones que vienen. Y tercero, que es el problema mayor, y en qué tiempo lo hacemos. Tenemos la tendencia a centralizar las competencias de un ente, por ejemplo, que vea todo el mercado laboral, lo cual está bien, porque si usted lo centra, usted puede coordinar. El problema es qué pasa si esas partes no se hablan. Esas partes no tienen los mismos intereses. Por lo tanto, cuando usted tiene ese problema, usted debe no de ver quién dirige esto, sino las funciones que tiene que hacer este ente, cómo nos las repartimos entre el sector trabajador, entre el sector gubernamental y entre el sector empleador. Entonces aquí nace lo que denominamos un convenio de cooperación entre el Instituto Nacional de Aprendizaje, que es el ente en Costa Rica que se dedica a la educación no formal, o sea, la que enseña a las personas y a los estudiantes técnica, la parte técnica, las competencias que se van a necesitar, pero ¿cómo hacemos de que en lugar de durar los 3 años que se ha durado anteriormente, cómo lo hacemos en 1 año? Entonces no se trata de eliminar funciones, sino de que cada parte asuma alguna de esas funciones para que haciéndolo en tiempo paralelo podamos acortar esos 3 años a 1 año o a lo sumo 1 año y medio. Entonces, en estos momentos estamos trabajando con el gobierno, con el sector laboral y obviamente el sector empresarial en este protocolo. Y adivinen cuál era la primera etapa del protocolo. La primera etapa del protocolo es que teníamos que cerciorarnos que el sector empresarial supiera exactamente cuál va a ser su mercado laboral a 2 o 3 años plazo. Porque en Costa Rica, y como les decíamos, el 80% son pequeñas, medianas y microempresas, el problema que tenemos es que entonces usted no visualiza esto a futuro. Entonces, primero había que ver quiénes sabían y quiénes no sabían. En ese proceso estamos y nos está dando bastante buenos resultados. Una vez que ya usted tiene esto decidido y que ya lo está trabajando, entonces viene qué competencias y qué habilidades son las que vamos a necesitar. Costa Rica es receptiva a la inversión extranjera, sobre todo en un área denominada ciencias de la vida. Entonces, lo que estamos haciendo en estos momentos es canalizando con las 22 o 25 empresas de ciencias de la vida que están visualizando para entre 2 o 3 años. Y a la vez estamos empezando a coordinar las personas mayores de 45 años que tienen que ver directamente, que se han quedado sin trabajo, para lo nuevo que se va a necesitar, irlos capacitando desde ahora. Esto es en un sentido práctico. Todavía no tenemos los primeros resultados, pero es una estrategia que como país nos tiene que funcionar porque estamos involucrando a los 2 grandes perdedores que tenemos actualmente. Los que han perdido el trabajo por el avance de la tecnología y obviamente los estudiantes que saliendo de sus estudios universitarios o técnicos no encuentran el trabajo porque prácticamente el 36% de estos estudiantes se formaron en carreras que no tienen ninguna demanda en el mercado laboral. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, because I think we build up on the discussion that we were having this morning, because we're adding some element that good social dialogue, productive social dialogue, tripartite cooperation is good for coordination, of course, but in your case is also good for forward-looking. So it could be really a process, a mechanism for innovation, in terms of understanding future needs and developing new ideas. I have to say that this notion of la ciencia della vida is quite fascinating and quite nice. But we're talking about social dialogue, so we can move to our next speaker, who's coming from the Trade Union Congress of Ghana. And I think it can help us understand what the contribution of the trade unions can make to this greening skills effort that we need to make, but also enlighten us on the challenges of informality, were mentioned before already in the case of Brazil, because informality, poverty, environmental degradation are things that go together, and it's a virtuous circle that we need to break at some point. Kwabin, please.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Let me start with a brief on Ghana. Of course, the minister in the morning mentioned that we are the center of the world. But in addition to that, the IMF says that for the year 2019, Ghana will be the fastest growing economy in the world. Unfortunately, most of that growth will come from oil exploration and mining, solid gold mining. Now, we have had this pattern of growth for a long time. Unfortunately, for this year, for the over 300,000 young Ghanaians that will enter the labor market, only 2% will get employment in the formal economy. The 98% will have to be employed in the informal economy or be unemployed. And of course, majority of them will be in the informal economy. So this is the labor market situation. In terms of government interventions, the priority has been to ameliorate the pain of unemployment. So there have been large-scale public works programs that attempt to offer employment to young people. But also there are opportunities in there to say, okay, what kinds of jobs are you offering to these young people? Unfortunately, we have not explored those opportunities. So you have young people being employed in all manner of jobs that are not necessarily green. And of course, you may have also heard that at least in the last 2-3 years, we have had a major challenge in the gold mining areas with illegal mining that have huge environmental consequences. So you have large tracts of lands, including forest lands, that have been destroyed. So one possibility would be to say that, okay, these large public employment sectors, programs, let's find a way of making sure that they regenerate the environment, the lands that have been degraded. Unfortunately, as I've indicated, we don't have much conversation around some of these things. And the political euphoria is just simply to make sure that people have jobs, regardless of the nature of jobs. The good thing is that you have many development programs in Ghana that talks about climate change. And it includes the National Employment Program, the National Employment Policy, which seeks to create decent jobs and also with a focus on green jobs. Unfortunately, that policy remains unimplemented. I've also heard about an attempt to develop a green jobs strategy, which is still ongoing. Now, some of the major problems with greening Ghana and in terms of skills development is the fact that, and in a meeting organized by the Ministry of Employment itself, they actually mentioned that there are inadequate collaboration between the sectors, including between labor and employers. So you have a situation where government ministries are doing many things, and they are not talking to each other, let alone talking to the employers or even the trade unions. So there's a limited dialogue in respect of climate change and mitigation actions, even within government itself, let alone bringing on board the other social partners. How do we move forward? We think that there's an opportunity to reorient most of the public works program towards providing skills in the areas of green jobs. And we can only do so if within the tripartite framework. Fortunately, again, Ghana has had a very strong dialogue system that can be taken advantage of to be able to do some of those things. So I think we need to come back together as social partners to be able to look at some of these interventions and to make sure that those interventions actually address the needs of the climate change. And this is also important because for many Ghanaians, the huge amount of money we spend in this public works program, people are not actually seeing the value. What actually is the value for money in some of these things? So public support for some of these programs are actually eroding. And it is important for us to step back to see how we put those young men and women to good use and in a manner that the benefit will be visible for most people. My next point will be on looking at the greater education system we have in Ghana. We just recently launched a new curriculum for basic education. It is not clear to many people how that curriculum got developed because not many people were involved. And you find that these curriculum continue to emphasize old traditional education system. So in spite of all the talk, all the things we have heard about climate change, you don't find anything in the new curriculum that is directed towards giving people skills in those areas. And unfortunately, and I don't know what pertains in other countries, in Ghana, the education sector seems to have become an enclave on its own, just churning out young people, regardless of whatever changes is happening in the labor market. So I think that it is important that we seek to democratize the education system to bring on board different voices and different actors in a manner that will ensure that we move education towards addressing climate change concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I mean, indeed, this issue of lack of collaboration across ministries in the same government is something that we found in many developing countries, and it's something that is a real obstacle of the implementation of any employment policy or of any green policies. There are different budgets, people don't talk to each other, there are parallel programs, there is fragmentation of resources. So this is a major obstacle indeed. And one example that you made is the lack of dialogue between the education system, the training system, and the world of production, and the business system and the trade union. So this is something that clearly needs to be addressed. And perhaps our next speakers can give us some ideas of how that has been done in the case of Spain, which I understand is a case of good practice in terms of really rewiring their vocational training system towards, greater attention to issues of, green economy, environmental sustainability. Mr. Antonio De Luis is the director of the State Foundation for Training in Employment of Spain. Please, the floor is to you. Gracias.
Muchas gracias a todos y a todas por comparecer. Lo primero que quería dar las gracias a la organización de la OIT por contar con nosotros para este foro y también felicitarles por su centenario, una organización tan importante. El papel de la Fundae, de la fundación que dirijo, es la impartición, la gestión de la formación de 4,5 millones de trabajadores al año y la proposición estratégica, tenemos la capacidad de proponer al Ministerio Estratégica de cómo se debe organizar la formación de ocupados. Coincido con la exposición de esta mañana de Federico Berera en cuanto a que estamos asistiendo a una revolución de tipo tecnológico, también una revolución de tipo de transformación energética y de competencias verdes. También coincido con el director general de la OIT, Guy Ryder, en el sentido de que esta revolución en la que estamos inmersos afecta a 3 niveles, básicamente. La definición de la política, es decir, las organizaciones debemos empezar a redefinir la política de formación, que pasa por una reestructuración que vaya de la detección de necesidades de formación, la impartición, a la evaluación. Tenemos que cambiar todo el modelo. También la gobernanza, las instituciones se han quedado obsoletas para este cambio tan importante y llevar de las musas al teatro a la acción concreta de la formación de los trabajadores. De los desafíos hemos oído esta mañana desafíos muy importantes que tenemos que tener en cuenta para estas modificaciones, como es el envejecimiento de la población. En España 8 millones de trabajadores van a ser jubilados en los 5 siguientes años. Habrá que reponerlos, ver si esos trabajos continúan o no. También tenemos que hacer un análisis de cómo estamos afectando a los sectores, porque generalmente cuando hablamos de estas competencias estamos hablando del sector tecnológico, tenemos que ver cómo afecta a todos los sectores este cambio de competencia digital. También a los territorios, porque generalmente las reflexiones que hacemos suelen ir acompañadas a la ciudad, nada de análisis de qué pasa en otro tipo de territorios. También un eje muy importante, que lo ha dicho José Salas también en su intervención, es la parte de a qué tipo de empresa nos tenemos que dirigir. En la gran empresa tiene todos los dispositivos, tiene toda la información, tiene medios suficientes, están súper adelantados. Ahí lo único que puede hacer la Administración es apartarse y no poner problemas. Ahora bien, en la PYME, que es PYME y mediana pequeña empresa, un poco lo que contaba también Salas, en el sentido de no saben en qué se tienen que formar, o sea, los estados y las organizaciones debemos decir en qué competencias se tienen que formar, qué van a sacar con ellos, o sea, qué van a sacar, cuál es su rendimiento, cuál es su mejora y, por otro lado, dónde obtenerlas. Ahí vamos a tener un debate importante todas las sociedades occidentales porque no vamos a tener la estructura formativa para las competencias que se necesitan. ¿Por qué? Porque las profesiones se están generando ahora mismo. No tenemos ni centros ni docentes para profesiones que no están generadas ahora mismo. También como desafío, no voy a abundar mucho más en él porque se ha hablado mucho esta mañana, la política de género. Con respecto a ¿qué nos podría llevar a un éxito? Desde España hemos tenido claro que lo importante era hacer una buena detección de necesidades de formación. Tenemos 4 planos tripartitos de colaboración transversal de agentes sociales y patronales, para la detección de necesidades de formación. Tenemos, por un lado, las estructuras paritarias sectoriales que nos informan de todos los sectores cómo están, cuáles son las necesidades y nos dan la alerta, es decir, por sector productivo. Luego tenemos un trabajo muy interesante del Servicio Público, que está aquí representado por Celia, del Servicio Público de Empleo Estatal, que recomiendo a todos, está en la página web de SP, que es el Observatorio de Ocupaciones. Es un estudio prolijo que dice qué ocupaciones van a tener lugar. Luego tenemos los centros de referencia nacional que ordenan las familias profesionales y hacen la investigación y desarrollo. ¿Está esto correcto? No. Nos faltan 3 capas aquí, bajo mi punto de vista. Nos falta la información de universidades, centros de negocios y otros agentes estratégicos. Ahora mismo no solo el conocimiento está en las universidades, sino hay otros agentes estratégicos, tecnológicas, tal, que nos tienen que informar de cómo está. Y esto tiene que tener un reflejo en la gobernanza, en cómo se gobiernan los sistemas de formación. La modificación normativa también es importante en el sentido de dar una agilidad y una flexibilidad que las administraciones no solemos tener. No solemos tener esta agilidad. También hay que implicar a la gran empresa, porque la gran empresa tiene unos dispositivos muy interesantes. El otro día nos estuvieron enseñando las tecnológicas españolas, las plataformas, los dispositivos están, digamos, en el siglo XXI perfectamente integrados. Hay que hacerles partícipes de la formación de su empresa auxiliar, la empresa auxiliar de la gran empresa, y partícipes de la formación de la PYME por responsabilidad social corporativa. O sea, a la gran empresa, que es la motora, la tenemos que utilizar para gestionar la formación e implicándola en la parte de la impartición. Todo esto requiere, bajo mi punto de vista, lo que me genera o nos genera a los que estamos trabajando en ello es más dudas que certezas hacia lo que tenemos que poner en marcha. Y el trabajo, bueno, pues es bastante ímprobo. Aquí acabo, luego ya.
Many thanks indeed. We still have 15 minutes, and I think it would be important and useful to use this time for some interaction with our speakers. So I'm opening the floor. I'm taking advantage of my privilege as a chairperson of this session to ask myself a question to our speaker, a question which is of particular importance for the ILO. And the question is exactly, do you have any recommendation on what could be the role of public employment services in helping enhance the greening of the skills that is the main focus of this conference. So we just need some Twitters from you. We are in the day of Twitter, so important messages about trade with China can be sent in 140 a small sentence. So I really appreciate if you give us some practical tips on what is the role that you see of public employment services. I already see one hands, please.
Muy brevemente, ya se había tratado esta mañana financiación del diálogo social, es decir, hay que financiar el diálogo social. El diálogo social no es gratuito, hay que financiarlo. Sería el primer consejo. El segundo, el eje, fijarnos en ciudadanos, dejarnos de estructuras. Es decir, el eje de esta revolución tecnológica en la que estamos es el ciudadano, el trabajador, el cliente final. Las estructuras no podemos estar ahí. Luego tenemos que articular también el proceso de reconocimiento de la experiencia laboral y aprendizaje no formales, es decir, cómo reconocemos estas profesiones nuevas que todavía no existen y, por último, y perdonad la extensión de la intervención, tener en cuenta las nuevas formas de formación, realidad virtual, realidad aumentada, teleformación y las potencialidades que tienen.
Many thanks. So while our speakers are thinking about the role of public employment services, I'd like to collect a batch of questions from the floor. Please raise your hand. And if you can briefly say your title and name. And, good questions are short, concise, and compelling. And I have a question mark at the end. Please, first.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Junéia Batista, yo vengo de Brasil, creo que de otro país, Mariana, porque en mi país estamos pasando por una situación muy dura. No existe diálogo social nem com os empresários, os empregadores, nem tampouco com o governo, que ha sacado direitos, redução de inversiones em las universidades. Temos uma huelga para 14 de junho, onde pensamos estar todos juntos e juntas em contra esse governo que ataca os trabalhadores campesinos, ataca as maestras, ataca os estudantes. Não existe uma inclusão de gênero em meu país neste momento. Então, é muito difícil falar sobre meio ambiente, quando o governo brasileiro, no ano passado, recusou fazer a próxima conferência do clima. Para este ano, então, foi invitado de novo a fazer, então, uma reunião prévia para falar sobre o clima que vai ser em Chile no próximo ano. Pelo governo brasileiro, disse que não tinha importância porque seria como fazer propaganda, publicidade para as NGOs. Então, é difícil falar sobre clima, meio ambiente, com um governo que está entregando nossas matas, nossa água, está entregando nosso petróleo. É difícil falar sobre isso. Então, tenho que, não é uma pergunta, me perdona Mariana, que está aqui representando o governo, mas eu tenho que dizer isto nesta reunião como uma representante de trabalhadores e trabalhadoras de meu país. Lula livre.
Well, thank you for your contribution. May I ask you to, when you ask your question, to tell to whom it is addressed, and in this case it's quite clear, but please, next speaker, no speaker. Next,
That's me, thank you. Kees van der Rey, I'm a consultant on green jobs. My question is related, or addressed rather, mostly to our speaker from China and from Costa Rica. And I'd like to ask a question, what you think of a skills development approach which takes a route in a more comprehensive national policy towards addressing climate change. I felt that many of the interventions today have been illustrating a reactive approach of skills systems, listening to enterprises, hearing workers, anticipating skills needs, and then trying to fill those skills gap. What I'm trying to listen to from China, who I know have in its 5 years plan a very ambitious reduction target of emissions, and Costa Rica, who has a very bold national conservation strategy. Since many years, it's one of the greenest policy countries in Latin America, I think. What do you distill? What do you think in terms of skills needs once you project the intended results of those 5-year plans, of those national strategies? And can you then tell the training institutions, please get ready and prepare for that future we want?
Thank you, Kees. I should acknowledge that Kees is not just a consultant, has been one of the intellectual leaders in coming up with the idea of green jobs, so very much appreciated his presence at this conference.
Thank you. Well, I think you've been asking, you have asked a very concise and also compelling question. I will try to answer. I will try to answer in a good way, in a green way. Your question is certainly also related to PES development. Firstly, I want to say, the Chinese situation, I think, very well. I want to say we are, from the fundamentals, we are working on the, restructuring of our industries. There is even, the reduction of the, production capacity. Then for the labor administration, it is about skills matching. Because once you change your, say, production capacity, there will be actually human resources. You need to, make arrangement. So the good side for China is that the labor supply is actually on the decrease. This is unlike other developing countries. So we are also able to see there is an increase for service industries. So we can manage to absorb people from, say, manufacturing jobs into service jobs. So that is one key fundamental. Second fundamental would be actually to work on, say, the PES. One key issue is I think it's very difficult to anticipate green skills, to anticipate green jobs. I don't know, actually, by training, what were you trained for? For me, say this is also an example of reskilling, importance of reskilling. By training, I was a computer programmer, a computer engineer. Now, today, I ended up talking with you, sharing stories about my life. I became, say, someone they call a diplomat. Well, so no way. I think actually my reading is that there's no way you can anticipate skills. You have to be responsive. I think colleagues are saying responsive to be ready for new exchange. I also sometimes ask questions: is skills training useful? Is TVET useful? Is education, training useful? You tell me. That would be my question addressed to you. Well, if it's useful, if it's totally useful, why are you still in here? You should be actually in some training institutions. You need to keep up your training education. I think actually the answer can also say it is useful. However, on-the-job training can be equally useful. That is why now we hold a job. We actually try to get ourselves trained day by day. So training is useful, but how useful? Still, you need to actually work out the details. Well, another actually labor, say, market institution from PS perspective, also from the fundamental would be, is not to be an idealist to actually advise on green jobs. It's about making the market responsive to green jobs, green skills. So we were able, I was telling our story, we were able to indicating green skills, green jobs. Then we had another mechanism linking with this. That is to give information about different occupations. So people can know how much wages people can earn from different, say, skills, from different jobs. This way, I think we can try our best to align green skills with their personal, say, income, with employers' gains, as well as employees' gains. I was also saying skills is the counterpart to technology. Skills is always actually trying to catch technology innovation. So in this way, I fully agree all of you saying we need to keep a human, say, centered approach, because skills are catching technology. So we have to be, keeping this human principle. With that, I tried. I don't know if I can be up to your expectation. Thank you.
Sí, la pregunta, y me voy a basar en parte de lo que el señor de la República Popular China acaba de mencionar. Los empleos verdes tienen que ser institucionalizados, basados primero en una realidad que debemos de proyectar como empresarios. Es decir, no vamos a preparar personas hoy para algo que no se necesita. Es decir, no podemos forzar a un empresario a fabricar y a innovar en las áreas en donde usted no necesita. Entonces, el primer punto es, el empresario debe de saber por lo menos qué panorama laboral, qué panorama de nuevos productos va a tener su empresa o le van a forzar a hacer a su empresa a mediano plazo. Pero, en segundo lugar, y no menos importante es, ok, no le podemos decir al trabajador, tome, esto es lo que le ofrezco que aprenda. Porque a todos nos ha pasado. Nada más contestémonos, ¿por qué los teléfonos celulares han tenido tantísimo desarrollo en los últimos años? Por lo que nos sirven. Aunque muchas veces el sistema se cae, nos hackean el teléfono, nos lo roban, pero a pesar de esas desventajas nos gusta. Entonces, ¿qué punto es el que quiero mencionar respecto al trabajador? Lo que le debemos de enseñar al trabajador es, primero, lo que se va a necesitar, pero que él pueda escoger dentro de una serie de competencias y habilidades que él intrínsecamente sepa qué es lo que le gusta. Y lo vemos en el caso de los niños también. O sea, los juguetes que le compramos a nuestros hijos, nunca le compramos un juguete que sabemos que no le gusta. Siempre le compramos juguetes que sabemos que le gustan. Pero muchas veces tenemos la idea de que si yo le compro algo, él lo va a apreciar y va a saber jugarlo muy bien. ¿Okay? Eso es lo que necesitamos también, darle ese incentivo al trabajador, porque a nivel empresarial usted no necesita trabajadores que no estén contentos, porque son trabajadores totalmente improductivos. Si usted le dice al trabajador, tome, esto es lo único que hay para que usted aprenda, se está garantizando que los resultados no sean óptimos. Entonces hay que verlo desde esos dos puntos de vista. Primero, tener la certeza de qué es lo que realmente vamos a necesitar y en segundo término, que es el trabajador pueda escoger, darle esa oportunidad entre las competencias y habilidades para lo que es, lo que le gusta más y para lo que es más hábil.
Thank you very much. Mariana?
Thank you. Yes, I think we have big challenges in front of us, especially in Brazil. And talking about recommendations, I would like to focus on 3 points. First of one is monitoring of labor markets. So I think government plays an important role on it. We need to look closer to what is happening on the labor market. And we can do it by analyzing data, but not only that, because especially in countries where we have high inequality and informality, for example, we need to have other sources of information and get to the local level as well. In Brazil, we are a big country, so we have many different realities in each part of Brazil. So we need to take it in account as well when designing our policies. Second, I would like to highlight monitoring and evaluation of public policies and programs. I believe we need to improve capacity building on governments to monitor and evaluate our policies. And we need to do it while the policies and programs are being implemented, so we have the chance to revise and to improve them. And third, and last one, I think low-skilled workers should be prioritized. In some countries, as it's the case in Brazil, they are responsible for most of the jobs, and especially the jobs that will be most affected by automation and by the transition to green economy. So we need to have a closer look on these workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have 2 seconds if our speakers want to add a final comment? Or there's still pending a question on public employment services, by the way.
Okay, so I think it's important that in developing countries, particularly in Africa, we need to assess the current state of skill development itself and know what skills are available, what skills are people being trained for, so we know what should be the future. Secondly, on public employment policies, I think I have stated that in Ghana, support for public employment programs are eroding. And they are eroding because people do not really see the benefit. And it's important that government direct them to areas where people can see real and tangible benefits. Finally, I also think that in all of these discussions, we should bear in mind that societies in Africa, for instance, have other problems. And sometimes climate change is not that obvious to many people. There are many poor people who, by previous policies, still remain poor, and they still have to depend on the fact that they have to cut down trees in order to survive. So we need to take these things into account and make sure that we ameliorate some of the poverty that has attended previous policies before we can even get people to think about climate change and its impact. Thank you.
If I can just briefly comment on the question on public employment services, of course they need to provide career guidance that guides people in the direction of the skills that are needed in the labor market, offer targeted training programs. But I think a role that's also very important in their area is to ensure that people have the strong foundational skills. If you look at in OECD countries, we see that actually 1 out of 4 adults have very poor literacy and numeracy skills. And if you don't have the foundational skills, it's very difficult to adapt to changes, to transition between occupations, but also to invest in further learning. So it's very important to identify the right skills, the skills that are needed in the labor market, but if you lack the very foundational, it's of course very difficult to adapt to changes. So the Public Employment Service plays a role in finding those people, identifying those people, and helping them obtain those skills, because of course it's difficult for employers to expect to invest in basic skills. So I think the Public Employment Service plays an important role there.
Thank you very much. Thanks to our speakers. Thanks for the question. I think quite a number of very interesting observations and very interesting experience have, been brought to the fore. I don't want to. It's very easy for any moderators. The discussion was very rich, and I cannot summarize it, and I don't want to do it. But there's one point I would like to underline, which I think is something new, and I think is particularly important. And is the point that was mentioned by José just now. And in my interpretation is that it does not end with skills. It does not end with green skills. That's just one physical input that, if we can deliver it more efficiently, could be helpful. But the real problem is how you deal with your human resources within the company, at the level of systems. So are you able to, point I'm making, skills are dynamic, so are part of a contribution that workers do and they first do to the common effort to really deliver a just transition. So I think this is particularly important. It's a new observation and I like it very much. I would like to thank everybody.